COVID first began, I guess I didn't really expect it to turn into what it did. I feel like everybody says, but I don't know. I guess I was kind of worried. Like, I knew that everything was gonna have to like change, and that people were gonna have to start taking more safety precautions and stuff like that. But then once everything started closing and masks started becoming mandated, and like more and more people were like passing away from complications to COVID, is when I really started to realize it was just like really serious. So it went from like, oh, this is something that might just pass, to okay, wow, no, this is gonna be something pretty big. The hobbies I started when COVID first hit, I used to be like, most of my hobbies in general, just like video games and stuff like that, and the gym. And since the gym's closed, the hobby I started doing was I'd go out at like midnight and skateboard for like 2 or 3 hours, and then I'd go home and sleep at like 3 o'clock in the morning. But that was probably the only hobby I started. And then I tried getting back into reading, and then now it's been kind of consistent. Like, I've just been reading since, but yeah, skateboarding is pretty much the main thing that I started because I couldn't go to the gym, so I think I could exercise more. First part of COVID, when it came to like the mental health and stuff, I already kind of have some of that stuff already, but the beginning of COVID kind of skyrocketed that idea, mostly because especially with the job of working at a grocery store, being in the essential workplace, like the only thing that really stayed open, it was really tough because it was like the first time I worked 40 hours like a week for like a month and a half straight. So that was really, really tough. Now with, I guess the difference in anxiety and depression with the way it affected me at least, it kind of made things feel even more like everything was the same. And it still kind of does get that weird feeling that I know everyone still kind of struggles with it. It is something that's really tough and kind of like hard to combat, but in a weird way, it kind of helped me like get that like mentality of like whatever happens. Every day is just the same thing over and over and over again, and that really sucked. And it stressed me out like immensely, like especially again with the work whole like 40 hours a week for like 3 months straight, or like 2 months straight. It was just awful. Well, when it comes to my friendships, nothing really changed with like those. I mean, it made it tough because it made it really hard for some of my friends who live out of state, some of my friends who have like parents that are like of the age of like concern, to like hang out with them. That was really tough. But most of the time it just hasn't really affected us since we usually talk online, play video games together, so that still worked out for us. And then when it comes to like the romantic parts of things, that was tough because it made it like really hard to go out on like dates and stuff like that. COVID being as long as it's going on for it, it's really starting to feel like it's just a part of everything. And I kind of, the whole, what is the phrase called? The message or the thought that it was going to just kind of stay with us for like pretty much forever, and things were going to change for like either for the better or the worse after COVID. Once like about 4 months into it, I kind of accepted it. I was like, yeah, nothing is ever going to be the same after this. You know, I'm still wearing my mask and stuff. I know I'm not wearing it right now, but when I go into public spaces, I wear my mask. I do everything I need to. I'm vaccinated, like all these things, and it just still has that feeling of like, wow, like this really happened. But I think there's a couple positives about what quarantine happened. Like, for example, I know music's one of them. Like, the big thing for me is that when COVID first started, I kind of realized that like social interactions matter so little compared to like what they seem to be when you're always in them. Which I know is a funny little statement, but like, for example, like the music I started listening to in quarantine was like nothing of what I used to listen to. Like, you know, I started getting more into like Harry Styles and One Direction and like 5 Seconds of Summer and stuff like that, and I started like blasting those more often because like it doesn't matter, like when you're not talking to people every single day, like hanging out with people, you're not like around 50 million people in one room, stuff like that, like it doesn't matter at that point. So it just kind of made me realize that like a lot of things like that like don't matter. Like I started to feel more comfortable like in painting my nails and like dressing differently and like doing more things, and I feel like in some regards COVID helped people like do the introspection and like really understand like, you know, who they were at the time, who they wanted to be, and how they could work towards it. I know a lot of people come out of quarantine and they're like, okay, now I'm gonna go to the gym more often, I'm gonna exercise more often, I'm gonna work on my hobbies and all that stuff like that. Like, so even though it is like very negative aspect, a very negative side effect on the people that like have been affected by it. Like my family has been affected by it. Everyone came out of COVID strong, so there's no losses to it. I know some people did, and I'm very sorry about that. But I feel like there's also the positives to look at it, that, you know, it helps the people kind of look into themselves and understand who they like want to be and how to get there.